everybody. My dad thinks his podcast is amazing, so please subscribe, give it 5 stars or whatever, and maybe he'll finally stop talking about it. Anyways, welcome to Sober At.
Welcome back to the show. I am Ryan. This is Jessica. We are sober as fuck. Before we get to today's guest, just wanted to remind everybody to please make sure you're liking, subscribing, and sharing our podcast. We're on all platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and also on YouTube. Don't forget about that. And please check out our website at our-noon, our-noon.com for all our resources. You can check out our podcast. We have our merch on there. Please make sure you're checking that out and also sharing that.
Correct. And quick trigger warning, we do talk about all of the touchy subjects. So addiction, sobriety, mental health, eating disorders, grief, self-harm. If it's triggering, we talk about it. So please prioritize your own mental space. Feel free to log off if you need to, but assuming that you stick around and enjoy what you are hearing, like Ryan said, share. We like to keep the podcast free and accessible to everybody. And we have someone special today. We always say that, but this is especially special because her name is Jessica.
That's right.
And I might be biased, but we are pretty amazing people.
That's right.
Just saying. Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, she's an author. She just had a book come out in May. She also wrote an article for People magazine, which is awesome. Pretty badass. So hopefully she's going to tell us a little bit more about that. Recently, she's 12 years into her sobriety, which she'll also talk about that as well. Go ahead and introduce her.
Sure. Everybody welcome Jessica Guerreri.
Hi, thanks for having me, guys. I'm so happy to meet you.
How are you?
Doing so well.
Good. Well, welcome. We're so glad that you're here with us today. I'm excited.
Me
like
too.
I said, Jessica's.
Yeah, I mean,
we are agreed.
It's one of the names, by the way. I don't know if you ever looked this up, but now like we're officially old. It's like an old lady's name. I don't know if it like brings that to you, but I saw it online the other day and I was like, I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, what? Excuse me?
I like old lady names though. Our daughter's name is Lillian.
Classic names, so
right.
all those are classic names. So
like
it's a classic name.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little backstory of what led you up to the book that just came out last month?
Sure. Yeah. So, okay. Well, here's my book. This is my debut novel, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea. What sort of started me on this journey was I have been sober for 12 years now. I started my journey where I knew more than anything else that I wanted to become a mom. But the thing that sort of started setting off all of these like blinking red lights in my brain was that I couldn't stop drinking in order to get pregnant. And so that was one of those things that it was like, oh, well, let's just like hold off having kids. And like, I have a background in special education. I was the cousin with, 20 younger cousins, and I had kids all over my lap. And so like motherhood to me was always the thing that I knew for sure. And so the fact that I was willing to put that off, was the part that kind of spoke the loudest to me of maybe something is wrong. So then I ended up, basically like coming to my knees where I had done all the things that you try and do, where you play all the games and you do tally marks on your arms and you have somebody monitor how much you're drinking and you hide the drinking from yourself. You have your partner hide your drinking, the lying, the humiliation, the incomprehensible demoralization. It was all of it. And at that point, I was a special education teacher and I was arriving at school hungover. Towards the end of my drinking, I get drunk before school and taught junior high special ed. And that was sort of the rock bottom, really, where nothing like catastrophic happened yet, in the sense that I didn't get arrested. I didn't lose my marriage. Thankfully, we hadn't gotten pregnant yet. And I just was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so I ended up, every day I would wake up in the morning and I would go to the guest bathroom because I didn't want my husband to hear me throwing up every morning, even though he knew what was going on. As you know, the partners know more than anyone else. And so I was throwing up, and I always threw up with a vanity in the sink instead of in the toilet, because I had splashed dirty toilet water on my face enough times from projectile vomiting into the toilet that I learned, why don't you throw up in the sink where it's nice and clean? It's all bile and it's all the gross, wine leftovers. And then you can just pour it down the sink and all is forgiven, and I can do it all again that same day. And so I was doing that. And I looked at myself in the mirror because it was a giant vanity. And I just didn't recognize myself. I was a completely swollen, just shell of a human being at that point. I was 29, and I heard a voice that wasn't my own, and it said, "Haven't you had enough yet?" And that is actually, I incorporated that into my fiction novel, that specific quote, because it's really powerful to me, because that's the insanity piece of it. I was just knee deep in insanity, and I couldn't see any way out of it. And so I had this glimmer, or this God shot of, okay, maybe the drinking is the problem. And from there, I just went into a 12-step program. I just walked myself into a newcomer meeting. I knew about 12-step programs because I had family members who were very vocal about their recovery. Alcoholism wasn't like a bad word in my family. It was like not a stigma or not anything bad, but it wasn't really understood fully. It was just, we come from Ireland. My mom's in Ireland right now with her family. And it's like the majority of us have history of alcohol abuse. Some of us found recovery and some of us died from it. And so I just was one of the lucky ones that I went in, I sat down, I listened to other people's stories. And then I started doing the deal, and I got my 30-day chip. And in that meeting, I started to feel sick again because throwing up is a huge part of my recovery story. And it turns out I was pregnant. So I got pregnant 30 days into sobriety. I got my positive pregnancy test and my 30-day chip in the same day. My daughter is 11 years old, and then I went on to have 2 more. And so I have 3 daughters who have never seen their mom drink a sip of alcohol.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Thank
Wow.
you. Yeah.
Well, that's a good reason to throw up.
Yes, I joke about the, you brought up eating disorders, and that's a part of my story as well with, it has everything to do with control, right? What you take in and what you take out and all of that. And so my daughters, for all 3 of my pregnancies, because they were all girls, I got hyperemesis. And so I threw up anywhere between 20 and 40 times a day for all 3 pregnancies.
Wow.
And so I was like, my higher power has one hell of a sense of humor, because I was like, look at me, I'm sober and I'm thriving and I'm throwing up. And then my second daughter, who was only 18 months older than my first, her first word was mommy, mommy. It's really sad because I would hold her on my hip and I would throw up while I was pregnant with the second, and she just, because she wouldn't let me put her down. And I was like, is this the picture of motherhood in and of itself? You have a toddler, you're throwing up from pregnancy, and you're just
wow. Women are warriors. Okay. We are superheroes. We have superpowers. Come on. Did you end up ever being hospitalized for the hyperemesis? That's serious.
Yeah. So I ended up getting, luckily, there's a medication that I found that my doctor prescribed me that was a miracle drug. It's called Zofran, and they use it for, yes. And so I was one of the people that
It worked.
It worked, and it worked like a charm. And so luckily I was able to keep fluids down and everything. But I didn't learn until basically my second pregnancy. I was like, oh, I thought everybody just kind of threw up all the time. And she was like, oh no, like this is considered, no, it's like amazing what they just like don't explain to you in the process. It's sort of like recovery too, where you're like, wait, was that normal? Is this like, and that's why I'm here. Like, let's talk about what's normal and what's not.
Well, that's good. Yeah, Zofran doesn't work for some women, and they do end up in the hospital severely dehydrated, and it can be problematic to the pregnancy. So that's one. I mean, that's great. You had 3 healthy pregnancies, and that is incredible. Earlier, like before we started filming, you told us that you have 2 dates. You have a sobriety date and a clean date, and they're 2 separate dates, right? Tell us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Of course. Yeah. Well, it relates to my book and writing my book. So I had about 7 years, or 6 years going into the pandemic. And I had a really good foundation of recovery under my feet. I knew, and I've known, and I've surrendered to the fact that like I can never safely drink alcohol ever again. Though there will be voices sometimes that it's like, oh, maybe it'll be okay. Oh, maybe, it's like those little messages in your brain that are like, it's been a really hard day. It would be really nice to like have a sip of wine, and then you play the tape all the way out and you're like, it wouldn't be a sip of wine. It would be an entire bottle. And then I would be driving to the store and, something horrible would happen. So when I was in the pandemic, all of the meetings shut down and then became online. And at that time, I had 3 children under the age of 5 at home. And I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. I had left teaching at that point. And I used writing sort of as my like saving grace. I started a mom's blog. I have a background in creative writing. I got my degree from UC Davis. And I just used it as, sort of like my online therapy to kind of go through what I was going through. But at the same time, I really needed that connection with other people. And I was feeling so isolated and disconnected, as everyone was. And all of a sudden, I had this like idea that, oh my gosh, everyone in the world now knows what it feels like to have addiction, because these early feelings of loneliness, of helplessness, of powerlessness, of all the things that we were feeling on those like first few weeks of lockdown, where we're like, what is this? What is happening? The fear. It's so relatable to people that wouldn't necessarily understand. And now I sort of open that door to understanding, that bridge that doorway to understanding. And so I actually wrote an article for Scary Mommy, and it came out and it just said, relating those 2 things together. And that was the first time I sort of publicly came out that I was sober, because before that, my family and friends knew, but I wasn't like on social media, like, yay, I'm sober. Because I didn't really quite know where to put it, since I was a teacher. And like, as I just shared, I had been drunk at school. Like that's an uncomfortable thing. And so from there, I was like, something still is itching inside of me. I was like, I can't exist the way that I am at home with no connection. And so something else just like creeped in and like whispered into my ear, like, well, you're not a drug addict. Like you're an alcoholic. So there's plenty of other things that you can try, and you're still not breaking your sobriety. So go ahead and do that. And so I went ahead and did that. And I explored, I live in California, so I could do literally drive up cannabis. I'm embarrassed to admit that my daughters were in my minivan, and I would drive up and get, every form of THC that I could possibly get. All that said, specifically mimics the euphoria of alcohol. As soon as I found those, I was like, oh, like, thank you. You guys just get it. Like, this is what I want. So I would mix and match, and I would find different things. And then I ended up having a surgery, And I was prescribed pain pills, and I was like, oh, well, if I do this with THC, this is the best thing ever. And so, well, not better than the alcohol high, really, but as close as I could get. Still knowing that it wasn't safe for me to drink, but everything else was okay. So in that time, I ended up luckily gaining some clarity where I was like, okay, something's feeling off about this. I had a really close friend who was also sober, and she would ask me the really hard questions and kind of be like, is this really different? Does this feel different to you? And I'd be like, no, like, don't worry, don't worry. And so I continued to write as my like outlet, and I felt really good about that. I started writing my novel, and I wanted to kind of show what it looks like inside active addiction in motherhood and how difficult it is to parent while you're in active addiction. And the only reason I could write about it so viscerally is because I didn't realize it at the time, but I was back in active addiction through drugs. And so I overdosed, and um, that's how I took it too far. And then literally the next day I woke up, I called my sister, and like my husband was there with me the whole time. We had family come over to help watch our kids. So we could like keep everybody safe, but it was the most terrifying experience. And I woke up and I said, oh my God, it got me again. Addiction got me again. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. And then it was just like this overwhelming relief, like took hold of me, because I was like, oh, that means I can't do anything. That means I can't do NyQuil. That means I can't do cold medicine. That means I can't, if, I literally have on my chart in Kaiser, I called my doctor. I was like, can you write, do not prescribe this woman anything, anything. She will try and convince you otherwise. I like watched her type it into my chart. And I just, from that moment on, the honesty has been so healing for me, because it just takes everything off the table. I can't do anything safely. I will find a way to abuse my relationship with food. I will find my way to abuse my relationship with exercise, with connections with other people, of like intimacy, in terms of like, I'll get really infatuated with someone and be like, I really love this person, and just like can't get enough of them. I cannot seem to like have a balance. But I know this about myself. And like through working program steps, having this, what I've translated it into is my writing, and saying like, oh my gosh, you know what's crazy is that a lot of women feel this way. A lot of women have these experiences, but then a lot of people can't articulate it, and yet I can. So I'm going to do that and see if I can like help other people along the process, because that to me feels like a gift that I can give other people.
Yeah, I love that. We talk about that a lot in recovery, like transfer addiction, and
Totally.
it can be so many things. Mine, I was here, alcohol, gambling,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden I had a shopping problem.
Right.
And it's one of those things you really don't realize. You just get you get whirled up in it. I've never, done anything like drugs or anything like that. So I don't, I
Don't
wouldn't know what, yeah. And I don't want to, but it's just one of those things. Like, I know if I did, I know where it would go.
Oh, absolutely.
And it just seems like that transfer addiction it's talked about a lot, but it's not, it's kind of one of those things. It's a sensitive subject, because you don't want to admit that, I've already had this problem. Surely to God, I don't have a problem with this. Did you find that
I,
as well?
so much. And it's taken actually the process of publishing my book and having these types of conversations where I've
Mhm.
started to like normalize the idea of like, well, you know what, like if I'm going to tell my story, I'm going to tell my whole story. Like I was kind of keeping the like, because what ended up happening is during the pandemic, when I was using THC, is I would get really hungry and I would abuse food, right? And then I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be one of those women that like gains 1,000 pounds in the pandemic. So an eating disorder reared its ugly head on top of all the other things. And so I was like, get yourself together. Like, what is wrong with you? I give myself no grace. I give myself no room for error. I'm, a perfectionist. And so I had to realize well, this was all part of my sickness, and like that's okay. And it's also it's okay to talk about it, and it's okay to normalize it. I don't struggle with it now. It's something that I have to consciously focus on and say okay, what am I trying to escape from? Essentially, what am I trying to get out of? What uncomfortable feeling do I not want to be feeling right now? And so can I solve it either with connecting with another person, with writing about it, or, with going to a meeting or talking to, a sponsor or a friend or my husband, right? So what are the healthy things that we can do instead? And that's what our natural go-to, right? Our natural go-to is easy fix. Where's the easy button? I will push it. I want to push it.
Right. Well, and it's you chasing the euphoria.
Yeah.
So people don't understand. Well, I'm not going to say people don't understand, but a lot of people aren't aware that it's not just chasing the high or the altered mindset. It's chasing the euphoria of what feels good, right? So even with working out or eating or relationships, you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so happy.
Yeah.
And happiness is great.
Yeah.
But when you have a personality where you always go to excess, right?
Extreme. Yeah.
It's hard to determine where that line is. I talk a lot about, I started my mental health journey almost 5 years ago. And there's no more, less, easy or harder. We don't gauge things like that. But when you struggle with something that is not tangible, and it's just this very ethereal thing, it's difficult to decide where that line is, because, okay, I can't drink anymore. That's not easy, but knowing that you can remove a substance that, even though everybody partakes in it, it's like everybody knows it's not good. Okay.
Yeah.
Drugs, pills, you can remove that. When it comes to things like eating and exercising and relationships, that's when you get to that point of self-realization where you understand that, oh, the problem wasn't drinking or the drugs. Those were symptoms of the issue. I have a self-regulatory problem.
Yep.
When I first started my mental health journey, I'd been dyeing my hair blonde forever. I mean, since I was a teenager, I was blonde. Okay. And I had to go all the way back to the beginning. The first thing I did, which sounds silly, but I dyed my hair back to its natural color because I was like, I got to a point where I said, I have to find a baseline. Do I love myself as blonde? Do I like how I look as blonde, or have I just always been that way and everybody likes it? I literally had to strip myself of everything that I thought I liked. Is blue my favorite color, or have I just always been told?
That, yeah.
And it sounds so nitpicky. I don't. It's just hair. It's just what. No,
building your identity,
exactly.
right?
I don't know. Right. I'm at that time I was 35. I was I'm 35 years old. And from the outside looking in, I'm successful. I have, I'm married. My husband, he has a white collar job and we have a kid and we're doing all the things, but I literally do not know who I am, where I start and where I end. And that can be terrifying too, because
as a mother, that in and of itself is the theme of my book, whether you identify as mental health issues or is that you lose your identity in motherhood. And that is true across the board. Everyone can. that if you're a mom, because you literally like carried a person in your body, or if you adopted a person, they just become your identity, not at any fault of them or your own, just that the love is so big. You're like, well, where do I belong in that love?
And
like,
there's a science behind that too, like the changes in your brain chemistry and your body, like when your offspring is in distress, no matter how big or small, you have a physical reaction to it. I mean, you really do.
You do versus your husband's physical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So different.
So different. I know. Everybody's like, you're so sexist. I'm like, I'm not though. Like, this is science.
Yeah.
My husband like accept the crying, not at them suffering, but we had a child who had colic, and she would cry for 2 hours every day, no matter what. And I used to have to go on a walk to call my dad because I was so stressed out. I wanted to help my baby. And he just put those big headphones on, like the industrial size ones. And he would just like walk her around. And I was like, does that physically not hurt your body to like hear her cry? And he's like, no, I just like, I just tune it out.
He's like, I mean, that sounds like you. He's like, I mean, of course I'm not sitting here like, no big deal. But I'm like, but it doesn't like it's like, imagine that like itching and being tickled like on the inside to the point that like you just want to like peel your skin off. I mean, that's honestly what it feels like.
Well, and imagine that as a woman in active addiction,
right? Oh my goodness,
as a mother, and then you have my book, essentially, because you already want to peel your skin off, right? When like when there are certain parts that are hard, it could be the new motherhood part of like the sleepless nights and the nursing or whatever it is, or it's the toddler one where it's like, oh, we can't just like go on vacation because that's not a vacation. That's like a different location. And so, yeah, you have that, like you said, like the itchiness. And so extrapolate that on top of being a woman in active addiction. And I feel like it just doesn't get talked about enough, where like the suffering is very real and very intense. And so, I'll get feedback from people that don't know anyone with, in recovery or sobriety. And I'm like, really? Like, look a little harder.
Right. Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. But, okay. And I will tell, because they're like, oh, Leah, my protagonist she's so wealthy and privileged and has this life of leisure, which of course she does. But it doesn't take away from like her real disease, which is really there. And she's really suffering from it. And so you can have all the most amazing things, right? You still have the kid and the house and the job and everything. But if you still are in active addiction, it takes away everything that you love.
And we live in a society too, where when you talk about any struggles that you have as a mom, it's this, well, I mean, you wanted a kid, you knew what you signed up for. Or on the flip side of that, there's a lot like, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, like mommy wine culture. And there's always this narrative of like, you don't really want to be fully present with your kids, right? Like, oh, this is mommy's special juice. Or they've even done it now with THC, where it's sort of acknowledging that being a parent is stressful and hard, but you can make it easier if you just like numb it out a little bit. And that's really difficult too.
Dangerous. To me, it's so dangerous.
And very dangerous.
He pitched my book as a frank rebuttal to mommy wine culture. Basically, like, what happens when you play that tape all the way out? Because if I was an active participant in drinking during the mommy wine culture phenomenon that really, really took off during the pandemic, the advertising that it was like back to school shopping, and it was like the wine aisle, and it's literally like mommy's sippy cup, and it's one of those giant tumblers, and people just pour a whole bottle of wine into it, and then they go through the parking lot of the carpool line, and you're like, so I actually wouldn't have survived that. Meaning, the way that I was drinking, I would have drank myself to death, because that messaging is telling me it's okay to do that. It's actually giving me the thumbs up and saying like, yeah, it is really hard. So we give you a free pass, and here's your free pass, and just take it wherever you want to go, because that's the marketing. That's big alcohol. We don't care who it hurts. So sorry about that, but we're not really, because we still make all the money off of it.
Right.
And so I refuse to buy into that. And I am actively promoting against it, because I feel lucky that I didn't get caught up in that, because I would have been a victim to it. I have no judgment to anybody that did get caught up. I absolutely would have been a victim to that.
Yeah,
Use.
I feel that 100%. I love that. I'm all for that. I told you before we started filming that I quit drinking a little over a year ago. Not so much that I had an issue, because mine are not so much substance abuse. It all falls under this umbrella of mental health. That's the thing, is we nitpick it, but the symptoms and things are the same. But I had a moment where we were on vacation. I've told this story. I ordered a drink. I drank it. My stomach hurt. My head hurt. I was like, this is just not, like, what am I doing? Like, this is just not fun, right? Had already been sober. And I had this moment where I was just thinking about alcohol, right? And I was thinking about all of the things it took from me. Like, if I'm speaking selfishly, right? This is a moment where I'm only thinking about what it was doing to me, right? Because I'd already thought about what it did to everybody else. And I had that realization where I never even had to touch my lips to alcohol in order for it to almost kill and take away everything in my life that I loved and adored. I never could have taken a sip of alcohol ever, and it almost killed my brother, my husband. My mom struggled not with alcohol, but with other things, and she passed last year. Like,
I'm sorry.
I just, and again, we do not, I'm not trying to get everyone to not drink, but for me personally, I was like, why do I want to continue a relationship with this toxic thing that has almost destroyed my life? Even if it's not an issue for me,
Right.
I've used the analogy of, if you have friends and they are a couple, and you find out that one of them is like severely abusing the other person and they get divorced, are you still friends with the abuser? I mean, and there's no right or wrong answer, but for me, like, I don't want to be friends or have a relationship with things and people who are actively abusing and hurting and trying to destroy the things and the people I care about, even if it's not trying to destroy me.
Right.
And that's why I said, I told him, I said, I'm going to just, I think I'm just going to go a little while without drinking. Like, it's just not bringing me anything. And then I was 60, 90, whatever days in. And I said, I'm never going to drink again.
Yeah. And then it opens up, and I'm sure you can speak to this too. Like, just opens up, like, the real person, like, because what did it bring? What did it do for you, really? And like,
Make everything worse.
It was imaginary, right? It was especially if you're addicted to it. I thought that I was this, glamorous, fun, all of these other things. And, it wasn't until I got sober that, people would tell me, like, wow, like, whatever this version of you is really wonderful. Like, this version, I don't know what happened, and it wasn't like I told people immediately that I was sober or anything. And I was like, huh, like, you don't believe it. And then it was like, oh no, that it didn't actually bring anything to the table. And if anything, it made me such a lazy, sick version of myself. I had no motivation. I had no drive. And now I'm literally the most driven person. If one of the qualities you could, I try and show for my daughters is, like, if you believe in something in yourself and you want to achieve it, you absolutely can. And I can, because I'm sober.
Our daughter's 14, and she always is like, Dad, Mom, you've had a glow up, like they say things like that.
Well,
And
example to show too, because it does, I mean, it physically changes what you look like, not everything, but literally if you put pictures side by side. And I was angry with, well, my friends were angry with People magazine because they asked for a picture before, and they wanted to do a before and after. And like, my friends are so protective of me. I was like, well, I'm not going to be mad at People magazine for featuring me. We like them. That sells a lot of books. And they're not trying to profit off of my, like, despair or whatever it is. I truly, if I'm going to tell the story, I also should show the story. And the story was, I was that red-faced, like, blown up, just sick looking person. And like, a picture tells 1,000 words. Like I look very different than I did before. And that was at 29. And now I'm 40.
Right. You're
So
selling the truth. I agree.
it's the truth, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Tell us about your People Magazine interview.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that'd be crazy to be to be a writer as you are creative. You
Yeah.
get sobered, and all of a sudden you're in this
Yes.
magazine that you've seen
It's like
probably since you were a child.
like everyone that wants
You're
to
like, are you
Yes,
telling me I'm the sexiest
that's
woman
right.
alive? Like, okay.
see a sober woman alive because I
Yeah,
will.
that's right.
Okay.
We'll see if my agent can get me a nap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I and my team, as we were doing all the promotion for the book and everything, I have this really amazing PR team, and we do things like this. I think I met you guys personally outside of everything,
Mhm.
but I there were some big gets that I was like, because if you want to get your message out there, you got to try and get the bigger places. And so
Absolutely.
we pitched these ideas to different places, and People Magazine was one of the ones where we pitched this idea of why are we still glamorizing women's fiction that looks like, okay, so Sally meets George and they go on a romantic date and they fall in love. And then one day Sally just drinks too much wine and they have this romantic connection and he takes care of her and he puts her to bed. He doesn't do anything with her, but she drank way too much and whoops. She realized she loved him. And it's like, that is the story of the romance books, the women's fiction, the like really, you know, just offensive literature
Mhm.
that we're continuing to promote, that says this is normal and this is okay. And like, this is how like love stories happen. I mean, literally flip on any show on Netflix, Hulu, any series you want to watch right now. Within 30 seconds, they're pouring a drink.
Yeah.
Within 30 seconds. Like so I'm like a huge binge watcher of shows. That is my like drug of choice. I love reality shows.
That's me too.
Yes. So like one thing I love about like Love Island is they like don't let them like get sloppy drunk.
Mhm.
They limit their alcohol intake. So I was like, wow, this is really refreshing because maybe they do really like each other and they're not being like forced into, everybody likes everyone when you're 3 beers deep. Like this isn't,
Oh yeah.
not love. So I wanted to like write about this idea of like, can we please stop romanticizing this? And what if we actually told the truth of what it would look like if you show alcoholism in motherhood in its truest form, like in its addictive form, and don't glamorize it. Don't make it pretty, don't make it perfect, don't make it the last scene in White Lotus where all the women are like
Yeah.
drinking the wine and they're like, beautiful and just giggling with each other because you have to have wine in order to connect with other women, apparently. Can we just stop? Can we stop?
Agreed.
And I have like no issue saying that. I'm just so sick of it. I'm so sick of it because it's a lie. It's not true. If anything, it detracts from your ability to be able to connect with people. It doesn't make you closer to them because what's happening with the chemicals in your brain is you're becoming a different version of yourself.
Mhm.
So if you are connecting with them, you're connecting with a drunk version of them and yourself, which
Mhm.
isn't authentic. And so what are we doing? What are we doing?
Right. It's they use alcohol as another way to make women look smaller and frail. It's that whole like rescue syndrome, men in movies who drink bourbon are powerful and
Mhm.
are making like CEO decisions, and women are, drinking wine and need to be rescued. And really the bottom line is alcohol is it's still, you're so right, it's still that like sleeping beauty mentality,
It's
and it's played out and it's dumb, and this comes from a couple who met in a bar
Mhm.
drunk, and I will
no,
say that.
my husband and I
and
do.
and yeah, and we laugh on a previous episode, and I'll make this PG, but the first night I went home with him, it was like 3 a.m. and I got up and he goes,
Long together. You just sat and read a book together.
yeah, we just read a book. Yeah. The first night I went home with him and we decided to sit down and talk about our feelings until 2 a.m.
I'm sure.
I was tired and wanted to go home and sleep in my own bed. And I got up and he goes, where are you going? And I said, I'm going home. And he was like, you can stay. I was like, no, thank you. And he told me, he was like, what's that about? I said, I wanted to go home and sleep in my own bed. And I wasn't afraid to say it. And that's so true though. Like, women don't need to be rescued. Okay. And it's not this whole narrative of I got so drunk. And I'll even go, and this is a whole other topic that I won't get into, but it also leads to this like rape culture too. Right. So my best friend, she has 2 boys who are they're now in their very early 20s. And from the time they were in high school, you know, we really like beat into their heads.
Mm-hmm.
If a girl is drinking, she cannot consent.
Right.
And it sounds extreme. Like, well, what if she's the only one? It doesn't matter. If alcohol or weed or anything touches her lips, she cannot consent. And the reason that we say that is because the brain chemistry is altered. And the way that we teach men and women what consent is and what help is very, very different.
It's so true.
And so I would always tell them, you know, if you get the cold shoulder from a girl or, you know, a woman doesn't want anything to do with you, don't get mad at the woman, get mad at your douchebaggy little friends who think that they're playing into this narrative. I could go on about that forever too. I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yes. Well, my second book that's coming out actually dives into sexual assault as it relates to recovery and that whole narrative where there's this like guilt that's associated, especially in women, where it's like, well, if I was drunk, did I deserve it? Did I ask for it? Did I like, which version of myself consented to this? And it's all about that. So I feel really passionately about that same topic as well, because as a woman that went to college and got sexually assaulted while intoxicated, I can tell you that it took me years to be able to reconcile that it was not my fault, that I could be any version of drunk, and it doesn't open up an opportunity for somebody to violate boundaries. And no is no. And so, yeah, it's one of those really hard things, but it also, like you said, it begs the question of, you know, I went to go listen to a romance author talk recently just to kind of scope out what it looks like when you do those Q&As and kind of like understand. And, you know, romance isn't really my genre, but somebody asked the question, like, what is your favorite trope? You know, you guys know what tropes are, where it's like, oh, are they like frenemies? Are they they shouldn't be together and Romeo and Juliet or whatever? And she's like, well, one of my favorite tropes to write is when the woman, when somebody gets really sloppy drunk. And that was one of her favorite tropes to write. And like, here I am judging, like, you know, I was like, okay. But what I will tell you as a writer, it's interesting is it's so cheap to like, there's so many times where I'm like, okay, because you have to say like, are they making eye contact? Are they holding something? You know, there is a lot of props that you have to do when you're writing. And even myself, I have to be like, oh, they don't have a glass in their hand, or they don't have a wine glass, and they don't have that. I find myself sometimes like sneaking back into that, but I'm super intentional about, you know, one of my beta readers was like, this is just not realistic. Women wouldn't get together and not drink. Like, that was in my second book. And I was like, they wouldn't go on a trip and they wouldn't be sober on a trip. It just wouldn't happen. And I was like,
but they will. But we do.
Wait a minute. Like, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, even if you think that, I would like to contribute to the narrative that says that's not true. And I would like to start changing that, because I have 3 daughters and like, they're going to grow up, and I want them to know that, you know, it's not a funny, haha, the woman got sloppy drunk and she went home with the guy. That's not a silly thing. Women can sit around in book club and not drink alcohol. It is absolutely possible. I've witnessed it with my own eyes.
And, you know, I know the romance genre is really, really big right now, especially when you get into more like kinky stuff. all of
We'll get to
those,
see, yeah.
right. All of those things that you read, even in the dirtiest of novels, can happen with people completely sober and consenting to everything. And that's what I like to remind people too, is again, trying to keep it PG, but like all of the dirty, kinky things you're in too
Yep.
can happen consensually amongst two sober adults. It doesn't have to be, it can actually be a woman, and I've read these novels, who is very empowered and very in control of
Right.
what's happening, and that exists.
And that's super
I
powerful.
like to remind everybody.
What a cool, like what a,
Right.
because you think that you know, I talk about in my book, like Leah, our protagonist, has like a shadow self where she thinks that that is the more like powerful version of herself because she's like unencumbered and not a mother. And she doesn't have all of these, you know, she can travel at a moment's notice, and like she could surf whenever she wanted. But like you learn that like all of those things, all of the good things that you seek, like they still exist inside of you. And alcohol is actually masking the goodness inside of you. It's not bringing it out. It's completely masking it. And so anything good that you're seeking from yourself and what you want, it already exists. Like you have the magic in you already. It doesn't come out because of drinking.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read your book yet, but I'm most certainly going to. And I love you. And not to sound like a fangirl, but do you want to be like best friends?
That's right.
Well, just, where do you guys live? I mean,
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, I was just telling Jess about your book tour that you're doing, and you're going to be actually pretty close to us on the 25th. So you'll be in Nashville.
is it Nashville?
Well, we're in Knoxville, so it's only a couple hours from us. So we may have to make a little
That is
special
going to be
trip.
such a fun event. I'm doing it with, there's a fellow podcaster who is, she's like this, her name is Kristen Bear, and her Instagram is Creative Sobriety, and she just celebrates like, how do you be sober and creative? And she interviewed me, and it was the same thing where it was like, do you want to be best friends? Like, really
I
cool.
want to be in, okay, I want to be in the circle, in the inner circle now.
So she messaged me and she's like, okay, so you're going on tour. Is there any way that we can do like an event? And I was like, in Nashville? I was like, yes, let's figure that out. And so she's like, well, I have a friend who owns like a sober bottle shop, and like all they do is sell, you know, sober drinks. Can we collaborate, the three of us, and then we can get it sponsored by non-alcoholic brands? We have the bookshop, which is literally like 2 doors down from the Killjoy, which is I want to say bar, but it's not a bar. It's a sober bar where it'll be. And I was like, this is pure magic because we have all the meetings of the mind. What a cool way of like pulling from every sort of facet of this newly emerging culture that we're trying to establish. I'm like, I wrote a book about like empowering, like, you know, recovery. You know, you talk about creative sobriety, and it's just like, how cool is that? And I was like, and I want to be a part of that. Like, I want to be a part of that world. Yeah.
Me too. And what we can do is we can take a picture of all of the women hanging out, not drinking wine, and we can post it and be like, see all these women hanging out in Nashville at the bar scene, not drinking.
Allowed in Nashville? I mean, if it's Vegas, where it's just like, do they like fine you if they're like, you're too sober to be here?
Yeah.
I mean, and you say it all the time, like, we're more fun in sobriety.
Yes, a lot more fun.
Still sing karaoke. I'll still put the cowboy hat on. I'll just be sober and fun. And when I'm done, I'm done.
I had a lot of friends, because I've been public, a lot of mom friends have come and sort of slid into my DMs to be like, hey, I think I'm struggling. Hey, like, can we talk? And one of the things that comes up the most often is like, can you still do fun stuff? Like, can you still go places? And I tell them, and I say with full honesty, I said, it took me a little while to get there, like truly, because I think there's a difference between Jessica choosing to be sober and then where you have to get sober, in terms of like the addiction piece. And I just, like, my first week of recovery, I went to Bottle Rock in Napa, which is like a huge bands come. It's like a drinking festival in the heart of wine country. And I have never been so miserable in my entire life. And it was like, I was torturing myself, but I wanted to like prove that I could do it because I'm stubborn. And I was just like, okay, well, it's still going to be fun. Life can still be fun when you're sober. And it's like, should you go to a drinking festival in your first week of sobriety? No, because it isn't fun. But eventually it became fun. And it's like everything I do now. I mean, now I get to like travel all over the country. Like my favorite thing is like airports, meeting people, like going, doing different things. But I mean, traveling and airports, I was like, that is my drinking haven. I was like, who can buy me a drink and I will miss my flight? Right. And it's so refreshing that it's like, oh no, like it's still fun. It's still fun to do all those things, and you absolutely still can.
I love
That's awesome.
That is a fantastic segue into our very last question. So we ask everybody, and I'm going to ask it this time because she's my best friend now. So
obviously,
we're going to take you back to your drinking days, okay?
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day with our podcast, we talk about a lot of serious and heavy stuff. Yeah. But there's also like some of our fondest memories are when we were drinking and we did a lot of really funny things. It wasn't always horrible. Sometimes there were funny things. So tell us a story. It could be about you. It could be about a friend. One of the funniest drinking stories you have, whether it's someone falling, peeing, getting naked. Like it's got to be something you think back and you're like, still makes me laugh.
Okay. This is really funny. Also, my dad will really appreciate this because he'll definitely listen to this. Okay. So I was a teenager. Like imagine me as a teenager. I was like, I was such a, like I could hide everything so well. Right. And I was like already starting the journey of like, I found alcohol and like already I was like, oh, I'm not even going to do this like a little bit. I'm going to do this a lot. And because I was so young, I could like bounce back and, so like my first few times of drinking, I like drank. So I drank like a water bottle full of vodka. And I managed to like, my tolerance has always just been, I'm 6'1" and I'm like an athlete. And so like, I'm just, I'm not a small girl. So I loved that I could like drink with the boys. I thought that was so cool. I can't stop rolling my eyes at that. And so I drank a water bottle of vodka and my friend had dropped me off. And it was so funny because my parents were divorced and I lived with my dad and my sister was off at Berkeley. And my dad is like a very live and let live type parent. He was also like a hippie. And so he was kind of like a party animal. And then he also like really trusted my sister and I. Again, she was at Berkeley. I was going to UC Davis. We were like 4.0 students. So it was like, we really were perceived as like the good girls, but then we were so sneaky and like getting away with a lot of stuff. And so my dad like never waited up for me. But on this particular night, he waited up for me. And I was just like blacked out, like completely blacked out. And so he like was like checking on me and like I just in my drunk brain I was like, okay, how do I get my dad out of my room? Like I have to get him out of my room because if he talks to me anymore, he's gonna hear it, he's gonna know. And so he's like still trying to talk to me, and so I'm like, Dad, I'm changing, like get out of here. And so I like start to like take off my sweatshirt and he's a dad and he's like, oh, okay. And he like, he like leaves and I shut my door and I'm like, yes, like I win. And I, go throw up or do whatever I'm going to do or pass out. I think back then I got to just like pass out and not throw up because I was 17 and that's what happens. And then the next morning I was supposed to leave to go to this like debate, thing. I don't know. I was like on the debate team, which was really just like an excuse to stay at a hotel and like make out with boys. And I came home with this big on my neck, and drink more, obviously.
Yeah.
So we were leaving to go, and my dad literally like never done this before. He made me like a 5-course breakfast of like pancakes and all the things, and he's like, "I want you to sit down and have this," because he knew. Oh, he absolutely knew what I had done. And my dad's like way of teaching is so funny because it's just like, I'm not even going to call it out. I'm just going to like sit here and eat this. You're going to feel like crap. I know you feel like crap. Please don't do that. Have fun at debate, So we talk about it like in adulthood now. And I like joke and I was like, I think for a little while I was like, oh, I still got away with it. And he was like, no, you didn't.
They always know.
You didn't? I mentioned like a huge breakfast because like, ew, gross, and I was just like, yeah, well, and so now I have 3 daughters and I'm just like, oh my God. Like, I hope that they're, I don't know. I hope they're nothing like me.
They're going to make their own mistakes, and you're going to make them a big breakfast,
right.
and you're going to sit there and watch them eat it and be like, how's that feel?
Yeah. I mean, also, I think my dad forgot that like a big breakfast in like early, like when you're a kid, like maybe that helped. So I think he thought he was doing a disservice, but like maybe my 30-year-old drinking like 12 or my 20-year-old drinking self, like, yes, I'd be sick in that. So I don't actually know if he was caught up. I think he actually like soaked in the alcohol more, and I was like ready to go. Like I felt like, oh, thanks, Dad. That's so nice. That was what I was trying to get across.
That's a good dad right there. I always tell people the key to like raising kids, especially teenagers, is to always know what they're doing without letting them know that you know what they're doing.
Totally.
And you only intervene if it's something that they can really, really like endanger themselves or someone else. But everything else, you're just kind of like,
okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because those things are happening, and like it's silly to say that a 17-year-old isn't going like I was about to go off to college. Of course I'm going to test the boundaries. Of course I'm going to do those things. There's a difference between like sitting down and like scolding and doing, all of that. He knew I was safe. He waited for me to be home safe in bed. The consequences are you feel like crap. And it's like, that is the consequence. Like, I hope you learn it. And it's like, eventually I had to learn it, and I had to learn it in my own way, in my own time, because that's the nature of this, right? Like he wasn't going to fix it for me no matter what anyways.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a great dad. I love that. That's a great story.
That is a good story.
A teenage and parent story.
That's right.
So that's perfect.
Where my head's at, because the other ones are so like, that's where my head's at. Cause I'm like, my kids are coming up. They feel like they're teenagers right now, even though they're like 11, 6. And I'm like, they're like little teenagers. They like got all dressed up for camp and like had their little outfits. And I was like, what? No.
He had to go to Lowe's. What was it, yesterday?
Yeah.
Lowe's. Okay. For like a fan.
Yeah.
And he asked our daughter Lily, he's like, you want to go with me? Just, get her out of the house. She's like, yeah. An hour and a half later, she comes down with like curled hair and like this cute
dressed
little shirt
up to go to the hardware.
He goes, we're going to Lowe's. She's like, I don't care.
I mean, that's actually a pretty good, Lowe's is a good spot to like meet some
for
apparently
working people. I don't know. Maybe she's
like, okay.
I don't know.
It's like I even told her, I said, I knew you were going to put that outfit on. It's so bad.
He's like, you want to go to Lowe's to me? And I just grabbed my purse and he's like, are you going to put real clothes on? I'm like, no.
Justin, come on.
Right. I actively go out of my way now for men not to notice.
That's right.
He's like, you look like a mess. I'm like, that's exactly what I was going for.
Well, the book is called The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea. It is out now. And we'll also share the links for you as well on our website. We'll do it on the podcast as well. Where can everybody get your book other than on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon. It's available in all the places. Barnes and Noble. If you want to, support your local indie bookstore, they can get it for you. They should have it already. But you can request it there. I have a local bookstore in town, the Avid Reader, that hosted my book launch. And I love supporting small businesses because I think, as we just saw, I think Jeff Bezos has enough money.
I believe so.
Yes, it is.
Insanity.
And so I just like to put that out there. But yes,
I like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, hopefully we'll see you in Nashville here before too long.
I would love that. I hope you guys do.
I'll just get in my car and go.
Please do.
Because I can do that because I'm a big girl.
That's right.
We'll be sober. And isn't that wild? You're like, oh my gosh, I know I can do it safely. I know I can. So responsible.
Anytime. get in my car and go wherever I want. I love
it. Jessica, this has been so much fun.
Great,
Thank
Jessica.
you for everything. This has been fantastic.
My pleasure, you guys. Good luck with everything. We'll be in touch, obviously, now that we're best friends. So.
Of course.
That's right.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Thanks, Jessica. We appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
If you love the podcast, which I know you do, please like, subscribe,
and hit that notification bell to
Boom.
get notified every time we post.
That's right. Dropping them, baby.